Welcome back, everybody. So glad you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about potential recruiting violations and the culture problem at Georgia. Or is there a jealousy problem at other schools? We'll get into it right after this. All right, guys. So
This
here we
coming
go.
From Jason McIntyre. Now, Jason McIntyre is with.
Give you guys a little bit of heads up here. This is Dave Hooker over at Off the Hook. He is a media person who heavily loves the Tennessee Volunteers. He's going to claim, well, I don't know that he's going to claim. He's going to say that he doesn't think that he's a homer, because you should watch his channel. He's going to say he's not a homer. But nonetheless, I'll let you make that decision for yourself. Caleb Calhoun here is his guest. And yes, I'm going to pick on these guys a little bit because of what they go into about the program, UGA. And I think that anytime that you put yourself out there like that, you're inviting someone to kind of give it back to you. So apologize if that hurts somebody's feelings. I'm not a Tennessee hater. Plenty of Tennessee fans out there that I like. And I actually like the program for the most part, but sometimes you just got to call it like it is. And if you're going to call out another team, you got to be ready for it to come back at you. So without further ado, I'm going to let Dave and Caleb get into it here, and we're going to talk about the points they bring up.
Fox Sports. So I haven't seen this reported elsewhere. So this is pretty new, but I expect it to spread like kudzu, as my grandfather used to say. He says on a tweet, sounds like we're going to hear in the coming days, weeks about the Georgia Bulldogs football program and recruiting violations. NCAA is doing more than poking around. Nervous football office right now in Athens. My quote guess is slap on the wrist. So what I know that there are a lot of Georgia fans out there. They're going to say, "Oh, these guys are a couple of homers for Tennessee." But if you followed the program, you're not. There is an issue that is beginning to cultivate itself in Athens, and it is a mindset that I believe stems from the head coach and his ultimate desire and need to better his mentor, Nick Saban.
All right, so now we're already into the speculation category. We're reading Kirby Smart's mind here on why the culture is the way it is at Athens. First off, let me point out, if you don't have a head coach who is interested in trying to be the very best that he can be, you probably need to get yourself another head coach, or you don't care about college football. Let's continue.
And I believe that discipline has been an issue. I think that's very evident in the drag racing things that they've had going on, and it cost a couple of people their lives. Which
the fact that two people lost their lives is absolutely a tragedy and should not be thrown into the lap of a head coach who wasn't there. There's rules put in place. There were rules that were already broken. And that doesn't come from Kirby Smart. That's not a Kirby Smart decision. They didn't call up Kirby Smart and say, "Hey, by the way, Kirby, can you go ahead and bless this for us to go drag racing?" That's not what happened at all.
And it's not the first time that's been an issue. So I think there is a tendency to look the other way by the administration at Georgia.
What?
So now we have an accusation that the administration is looking the other way in the pursuit of college football dominance. You're saying that the administration is okay with what happened because of the pursuit of football, because they're not holding up a high enough standard. First off, sir, let me be completely clear. Georgia has kicked players off the team that were just accused, hadn't been anything but arrested and accused, hadn't been convicted, kicked off the team under Kirby Smart for things that ran afoul of the law. But let's continue.
Also think there is a growing problem in terms of the way that program is run, and that is all business, all business, all business. Now, we talk about the NIL and how it can help Tennessee and other programs bring people in, Caleb, but it also gives players the opportunity to say, this ain't right. I'm not having a good time. I'm out. And some good players are doing that. These aren't just terrible players that can't find a spot on the roster. Some good players are leaving, and that's going to continue to happen.
So here is another statement where the information is not even been looked up or looked into. So in the transfer portal for last year, Georgia lost Adonai Mitchell to Texas. They lost Trayvon Marshall to Alabama. They lost Jaheim Singletary to Arkansas and Arik Gilbert to Nebraska. Arik Gilbert's had a checkered past. He's went from LSU to Florida to Georgia. Now he's at Nebraska. He's a tight end, and he's probably not going to get a whole lot of playing time behind Brock Bowers. This seems to be an absurd amount to a Tennessee fan. Georgia lost 3 4-stars. They lost 4 4-stars. And they picked up 3 4-stars in Smoke Bowie, Ra Thomas, and Dominic Lovett. Now we're talking about players leaving a school. Let's be completely clear. 15 players have left Tennessee this year. 15. That's transfer. That's not going to the draft or any of that stuff. That's 15 transferred out. Georgia's had 9. So you have more than 50% more players transfer out than what Georgia has. So what does that say about the culture and I guess the environment at Tennessee? If Georgia's is bad at 9, how must bad it be at Tennessee for 15? But again, we'll move forward here. We'll move forward.
And I believe that Georgia is the old school Alabama system from early in Nick Saban's career. They're incredibly hard on players. And I believe from somebody that has knowledge of both programs that you look at a Tennessee and loving isn't the right word I'm looking for, but there is more of a family atmosphere, which I believe you're going to have some of that moving forward, or your players are going to transfer.
What did he say?
Well, this right here shoots itself in the foot more. That statement shoots itself in the foot more than what he realized, because if you have more players leaving Tennessee than what you have at Georgia, you either don't have the loving culture that you say works, or Georgia's way of doing it works better than it does at Tennessee. So that statement is completely shot.
Despite winning 2 national titles, I think there are some significant cracks in the armor as far as from a culture standpoint, big time culture standpoint.
The culture that they are referring to, the culture that a coach brings, which I think is fair. I think it's fair to talk about a culture that a coach brings. What I think it is impossible to do is make those kind of comparisons if you are a fan of a team who's had 7 coaches in the past 14 years. If you've had a player who has stayed at your program for 3 years, if you have a player who has stayed 4 years, there's cases where that same player has seen 3 or 4 head coaches. Well, at least 3. So Georgia's had 2 head coaches in the past 22 years. I think the culture at Georgia is fine. A Tennessee fan base is trying to say that Kirby Smart has lost control of the program, that it's all of a sudden all hands on deck, the bus is in the ditch, or the ship's going under, or any of that stuff you want to say, whenever Georgia is doing just fine.
And a driven to succeed at all costs standpoint, which could be why the NCAA is sniffing around. Your thoughts on Georgia? Am I bringing up valid concerns, or am I reaching a little bit too early? I respect your opinion. You can be honest, but this person that told me this has knowledge of both programs and said it's run completely different. Georgia is than a lot of other programs currently, one being Tennessee. So
of course, Georgia's ran differently. Alabama is ran differently. Texas is run differently. All these schools are run differently from one another. No 2 schools are identical, number one. But if the insinuation is that Georgia does things at a different level, as far as, are you saying that Georgia is more, harder on the kids because they want them to be more disciplined? Or are you saying they're not disciplined, but somehow still winning national titles? I don't understand that statement. It doesn't make sense to me. You can't both be successful and have players stay and have a culture problem of not being loving enough, and compare that to what Tennessee's doing. Tennessee ranked first for like 5 days in the past, I don't know, however many years. First 10-win season in I don't know how many years. More players in the transfer portal than Georgia. Less players going to the NFL. A lot more coaching turnover. A lot lower in recruiting rankings. I'm trying to understand where the fault is with what Georgia's doing. But let's move on.
I agree. I think we need to add a little bit of context. You're right. It could be about Kirby Smart one-upping Nick Saban. I think it's about the administration, and I'm going to tell you why.
So Caleb was doing really well right up until he made that statement.
Georgia, and a lot of Tennessee fans never wanted to admit this, but it was true. For the most part, outside of like a ring selling scandal or something like that, under Mark Richt was the ultimate model of integrity for college football.
Yes.
I mean, they were what you wanted a program to represent college football to be about.
Yes.
They sacrificed winning.
Sold their souls would be another term.
Yes, that is true. Well, they sacrificed winning to a certain degree because of it. And they tried to make that case, by the way. I remember it was 1 year they were playing Alabama. This was when Mark Richt was there. It must have been 2014, might have been Mark Richt's last year, 2015. The week leading up to it, somebody in the administration basically said, we're just at a disadvantage from Alabama because we try to do things the right way, yada, yada, yada. And Alabama blew them out the water. And by the way, I somewhat agreed with that because Nick Saban, I'm not saying Nick Saban cheats.
Hold on. So before we go any further, it takes about half a second to do a Google search, and you can find out Mark Richt had 11 players arrested by 2010. I'm not trying to say that these guys haven't done their homework, but it would certainly appear that they really haven't dug into the facts on these. These kind of seem to be knee-jerk responses. And I know there was at least 4 other players in 2014. There were numerous arrests at UGA under Mark Richt. Seemed like that was one of the conversations that I've actually had with one of my other guests on my show, is that we were really surprised at how few infractions we had after Kirby Smart came to the program, not with the Georgia players, but with Clark County law enforcement, which is Athens, Georgia. This seems odd to me, the way this is being portrayed here, because the numbers just don't back it up.
Saying he's a dirty coach or anything like that. I've always felt Nick Saban. Here's been my feeling on Nick Saban, Dave. I feel like Nick Saban will push the boundaries just as far as he can push them without getting into serious trouble. He looks at how can I manipulate and push the boundaries that probably is not very that there's not a lot of integrity to what I'm doing, but it's technically not breaking any rules, if that makes sense. Or it's not breaking any serious rules. And under Mark Richt, Georgia did the opposite. I do think they may have sold their soul a little bit, but in their defense, they were probably like, we're not winning any national championships. Other schools are. They're rubbing it in our face that we're not winning national championships when we're trying to uphold these standards. You know what? Forget it. Middle finger to everybody. We're not going to care anymore.
Right.
And I think it would be the same as if Notre Dame finally says one day overnight, we're done putting these academic standards on our players. We're over it. We're tired of losing. And they were wrong to have these academic standards in the first place for their players.
So before we go past that, I just want to point out that you can't simultaneously say that Georgia is the old school Alabama. Kirby Smart came from Alabama. We all know that. And then say that Nick Saban is technically not breaking any rules, so that's okay. And then say that Georgia doesn't care about standards. That doesn't make sense either.
And so I think that's where Georgia got with Kirby Smart. So in Georgia's defense, I guess is what I'm saying, I think they've gone completely the other way, and they have no idea how to walk that fine line that Nick Saban knows how to walk, which is, again, push the boundaries, certain distance, as they said about Slytherins and Harry Potter.
What? Now he's talking about Harry Potter. What boundaries is Kirby Smart stepping over? So he's stepping over boundaries. Okay, well, what are they? What are we talking about here?
Am I just being soft saying that you win 2 national championships, but your program is running afoul now, possibly of the NCAA, legal authorities, morality when you're drag racing out in the street. And if I'm being soft, tell me.
If you think Georgia has a problem, let me give you a list of the players just since 2020 and what have happened at the University of Tennessee. May of 2020, Tim Jordan was arrested on gun and drug charges. In July of 2020, Emmett Gooden Jr., felony domestic assault. Martavius French, Aaron Willis, and Isaiah Washington were arrested on drug charges in 2021. William Mohan and Saban Herring were both arrested in September of 2022 for domestic assault. And Jalen McCullough was arrested in October of 2022 on felony assault. That's 8 or 9 players that took me about 5 seconds to find. I'm not saying Georgia hasn't had a problem here and there with players being picked up for this, that problem or the other, but you can't live in a glass house and start throwing stones and claiming that Georgia has a culture problem or a discipline problem or a morality problem and things are getting out of hand without saying, well, it's actually worse where I'm at. So, yeah.
Would you rather have the 2 championships and people literally getting killed in the street?
And by the way, Dave doesn't seem to know that drag racing is a huge problem in Atlanta. That has become a big problem here recently. So I'm not saying that's an excuse by any stretch of the imagination. What I am saying is that this is not something that is uncommon in the Atlanta area. It's not. If you go down to downtown Atlanta, you're going to hear people zipping around. That's been happening for a long time, and even the mayor's tried to figure out a way to address it. It's a part of a ongoing problem in the Atlanta metro area. That's not a University of Georgia exclusive problem. To say that the culture was going to take a slip after winning a national title, Georgia literally just proved that they can overcome that. Not only can they overcome the discipline problem, they can overcome the fact that they put 15 players into the NFL. They overcame that as well. So to me, it's pretty difficult to say that Kirby Smart's lost any type of control. By the way, if we go back just 1 year ago, keep in mind that Georgia suspended linebacker Adam Anderson amid a rape allegation. That was just the allegation, and he was an NFL draft prospect at the time. So I don't want to hear the whole thing. And that was a year ago. That's after winning the national championship. Georgia is showing that they will put players off the team. That they will suspend them. And what was the other guy's name? Was it Simmons? I think it was Simmons. Stevens and Simmons were both charged early Monday morning on the altercation. Kirby provided a full update. He gets up there and gets after it, and he's interested in trying to make these guys better. I know there's been players that have been kicked off the team. There's been players that have been suspended. I don't really know what else to tell you guys, other than maybe you should do a little more digging and make sure that you got your facts straight. So, but other than that, guys, I really appreciate everybody else being here today. Go over to what was the name of that again? Was it On the Hook or Over the Hook? What was it? Let me check it again.
This coming
Off the Hook. There we go. Off the Hook. So go over to Off the Hook. Give those guys a review. Let them know what you think. Tell them Big Dog Brett sent you, and just let them know what the facts really are. If you agree with them, go let them know. Let me know. What's your thoughts? Leave it down below. Really appreciate you guys joining us today. You have a great day. God bless. Go Dawg.
So some people were, they were doing some stuff, and then other people were like, hey, don't do that stuff.